And now I'd like to welcome you to our ALA Solution Series webcast, Legal Support in 2030. Will your firm be ready? I'd also like to say a thank you to our sponsor, Big Hand. With 3,300 clients and 800,000 users worldwide, Big Hand has helped law firms transition from the practice of law to the business of law for the last 3 decades. Its tech solutions, including both people and financial productivity tools, are used by over 80% of AmLaw 200 firms today. Each year, it surveys hundreds of law firm leaders to produce detailed reports on the legal landscape, including its most recent release, Time for Change, that focuses on modern workflow and support staff challenges. I'd like to welcome today's host, Duska Frank, the Global Director of Solutions Management at Big Hand. Welcome, Duska. We look forward to hearing all about what you and your panel has to share with us today, so you can go ahead and take it from here. Duska's not with us, so I'm going to go ahead and introduce you. Give me just a moment sharing here. We are joined with Julie Logan from Thompson Coburn.
Hello, everyone. As mentioned, I'm Julie Logan, the Senior Director of Strategic Workforce Planning and Development at Thompson Coburn. We are based in St. Louis, but we have 8 offices and approximately 430 attorneys across the firm. My role at the firm is sort of how it's spelled out. We're really focusing on succession planning, strategies for the future, which includes really overseeing firm-wide talent acquisition, professional development, but I really specifically concentrate on practice support teams. And of course, as you all know, those are the people who directly support the attorneys. So this is paralegals, legal administrative assistants, specialists, entry-level administrative roles, docketing systems, and document production, otherwise known as word processing. So really any position that is attorney facing at the firm falls under that umbrella. We started our Big Hand journey at the end of 2021 with a 2022 launch. So there were really 2 scenarios that drove that change in the way that our teams were supported. First of all, I know we talk about this a lot, but during the pandemic, we were fully remote for a couple of years. We needed more visibility into the work that was being performed, and we were being asked, like, what are the assistants doing from home? How can we measure that productivity? So I think with most traditional law firms, people were in the office 5 days a week typically. So then when we pivoted to a virtual assistant model, we wanted to be able to, like I said, have more visibility into that. So we did review a handful of vendor products, but Big Hand stood out as the most reliable system that met our needs for our firm and how we had our workflow set up at the time. We were really looking for a tool that would increase automation for sharing the work, providing faster services so the attorneys could just submit work and it would be done, completed quickly and accurately by the right person. And then we also wanted some reporting features so that we would know what kinds of assignments were coming through to the teams, who was completing them. We were also able to utilize the reporting function then, and now we continue to use it daily to really identify who has capacity, maybe to add more support or different kinds of support in the legal teams. We need to know which assistants need upskilling or cross-training. We need to know which work types are no longer relevant or should be shifted to a different department. And then we are also utilizing that information to decide where we're overstaffed and where we're understaffed. And of course, the second issue is the one that we're all facing. 30% of our legal administrative workforce can retire now or within the next few years, and recruiting has just become our biggest challenge. So to prepare for the future support models that we envision, We really want to do more with less people, and that has really required us to change our traditional model. In St. Louis alone, which is our largest office, we did not do a staff reduction, but staff naturally was reduced due to attrition and retirements from 90 to 75 just in St. Louis in a short period of time. And we really were able to achieve that by not replacing like for like positions. And we started creating workflows to share work and hire a different kind of staff member. So prior to Big Hand, our practice support teams were sharing work through email assignments. Awful, awful. I think you all probably can relate to that. That's when we started piloting Big Hand with document production or word processing only. That really came from a panel discussion at an annual conference. And I think three of the panelists said, really start with your word processing team and go from there. And that was great advice. It worked well for us. Once we kind of got that under control, we piloted in our second largest office, which is Chicago. The Chicago office tends to be the champions of new technology. So that's really advice, which we'll talk about later in this session. But we really just started then ripping off the Band-Aid in each office after that. Our partners are still supported by LAAs. We're working on changing that model in the future, but for now, they are supported by LAAs. And then we started integrating associates into team support. The workflow is monitored by team coordinators. Those are higher performing LAAs with leadership abilities, so they could apply for the position. And we promoted several people into that role, and they do an amazing job. We also created a specialist role for our subject matter experts in each practice support team so they could train new people on practice specific work. So we're primarily utilizing Big Hand for the legal support teams and getting the attorneys and paralegals assignments to those teams of people. However, we are in the process of integrating two different departments. We will be moving our office services team, which we outsource to IST. They will be moving into Big Hand. And then we are also working with our litigation support team to start utilizing Big Hand for their tasks. So that's my journey with Big Hand.
Amazing. Thanks, Julie. And I'm here, everyone. Let's move on to Karen.
Hi, everyone. I'm Karen Sargent at Fox Rothschild. I'm our Director of Practice Services. I have been in the legal role for about 25 plus years. Most of that time was spent in the role of an office administrator. We launched our journey with Big Hand in 2021 and have since incorporated 3 additional departments. And so I've been involved in the launch and implementation across the firm for 2 of those departments, one of those being our Attorney Resource Center, which Teresa's going to talk more about. But also we incorporated a new title within the firm, our legal team assistants. And so we were looking for a way to create a pipeline of talent in the firm because, as you know, people are not coming out and saying, I want to be a legal secretary, right? And so we went through a phase of rebranding our receptionists, and we went through months of training and upskilling everyone. Rebranded them, renamed them, and now they have elevated responsibilities. Yes, some of those folks do still sit at the front desk, but they are doing conflict checks and expense reimbursements, travel arrangements, a host of all other sort of administrative assistant duties, if you will. And that's been very successful for us. We have promoted quite a few of those LTAs into the CSS role, which is our dedicated legal assistant role. And so that's been very positive. We have also onboarded our office services group into Big Hand. We were previously using an in-house product for that. So that was a very easy, natural progression for us. But now we have the amenity of a lot of data and reporting, which we didn't really have as part of the prior system, which has been hugely valuable to understand what work is being performed, where, to what extent, those types of things. Being able to leverage the data to help make data-driven decisions has been a big part of our journey with Big Hand. And we are now, we've just implemented our legal assistance into productivity management. In our firm, this has been a fairly coveted group of individuals. So we have baby stepped them into tracking their productivity, and we are recording that. But I will say that we did that as a baby step, and it is residing outside of Big Hand at this moment. But we are leveraging Power BI for that reporting and that data as well, which has been nice to have the same platforms for all of these workflows. So that is sort of our journey and a little bit about the structure and positions here at Fox. And I'll let Teresa talk more about our Attorney Resource Center.
Teresa, you want to jump in? Then we'll go to Natasha.
Sure, I didn't want to cut off Natasha, so that's why I was waiting. So my name is Teresa Smith. I am with Fox Rothschild as well as the Attorney Resource Center Manager. I am out of our Princeton, New Jersey office. Fox Rothschild has 30 offices, and I have the privilege of working with the team at the Attorney Resource Center to cover all 30 of those offices. We use Big Hand as our driving force for everything that we do. Because we need to be able to monitor all the tasks. There are about 1,000 attorneys within the Fox family. We probably cover half of those attorneys in terms of support. And in that support, it is monitoring not only the tasks that come in, but the time of day. My team works from Sunday to Saturday, 7 days a week. So that's from 8 a.m. to 11 p.m. We only are closed 2 days. That is Thanksgiving and Christmas. So in order to staff the team, it's understanding what type of tasks are coming in, the time of day, and what we can do to make sure that the work gets out. Not only do we do the document work, but we also do the filing and docketing. So we're covering like two sides of the house in terms of support. And that support could be anything and everything from Bates labeling to understanding the Microsoft Word package and being an expert in it. We are a resource not only to the attorneys who are not supported by the CSS, but we also are a resource to those that just need support because of the time of day. The Big Hand has helped us not only to navigate what those tasks look like, but it also helps us to understand the needs of the firm from the different practice groups. It also has helped us to understand teaming and what that looks like. Within the Attorney Resource Center, we have 3 supervisors that help cover those shifts because it is a long day. But we also have shifts in terms of people who start as early as 7:30 in the morning and ends at 10. And then we have another shift that'll come in at about 3 o'clock and work until 11. We have a mid shift that comes in from 11 and works till about 7. And the reason why we do that is not only are we working across the globe, but we also have the different timelines, right? We have the different, we have a West Coast and we have a Midwest. We have this group broken into regions so that we can give dedicated support to the same attorneys within a region. So you'll have the West Coast will have, let's say, 4 offices, and I'll have 5 dedicated specialists. All the work will flow through Big Hand. I have a workflow coordinators who will monitor to make sure that the work that we're receiving is for us, right? We don't want it to be a paralegal work where we should be billing. So we want to make sure it goes to the right team. We'll make sure that it's the right work in terms of they attach the documents. Big Hand gives us visibility and all of that, which is also very helpful. In addition to that, it also lets us know how long we stayed on a test. It gives transparency to the attorneys when they put the work into Big Hand, so they can actually follow the journey of their task. I have worked at another firm where we used Outlook. It was a mess. It was hard to follow because we color coded everyone in the team, but then I couldn't get any data from it, right? I couldn't figure out who was taking the easy task and who needed work on the harder task. How long was it taking for them to return a task back? Big Hand has given us visibility and understanding not only the team, but the skill sets and working collaboratively in terms of getting a task completed. So that's my job.
Thanks, Teresa. And last but certainly not least, Natasha.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Natasha Varela. I serve as the Senior Manager of Office Administration at Jackson Lewis in Miami. Jackson Lewis is a national law firm with over 58 offices across the US and over 1,000 attorneys. I'm delighted to be here today to discuss legal support in 2030. So we're currently in the process of launching Big Hand at our firm. So I'm excited to share some of our early experiences and reasons behind the decision for going to Big Hand. The legal industry, as all my panelists have also said, is undergoing a major shift and change as far as the way we practice, but also how we deliver support across our teams. So expectations we're finding from our attorneys and our clients are rising as far as demand for greater efficiency, responsiveness, and being innovative. So I think for our firm, in recognizing these trends, we made a conscious decision to invest in Big Hand to see data-driven information, right? So tools for workflow and staying ahead. Implementing the technology for us hasn't just been about streamlining the information, but also empowering our teams, our administrative professionals to become strategic partners, per se, with their attorneys and collaborate with their workspaces. It's a significant change for us and a shift from traditional reactive support, I will say. So for us, I'm truly looking forward to collaborating with the panelists and just garnering information as we embark on the launch ourselves. We're currently mid-launch, I would say, for us. We have optimistically decided to launch to our full legal support teams. And so we're about halfway through that process and it's going well, obviously, but it's still a launch. So excited to be part of this panel and get feedback and share what we've seen so far. Thanks.
Thanks, Natasha. So wonderful. I did not ask these ladies to speak at all about Big Hand, and they have spoken quite a bit about it. So I'm just going to share my screen now, and I will introduce myself. So are we seeing my screen? Can somebody just give me a thumbs up? You can see my picture. Okay, excellent. All right, well, welcome. Apologies for the issues with Zoom. It never fails. I seem to have issues. If anybody happened to attend a webinar I hosted last week, I could not share my screen at all. So this is an improvement. So, and it always happens with any platform, so not a fault of Zoom. But anyway, here we are. So thanks for being here. Thank you to ALA for having us again. We had such a successful session at ALA in Nashville that we got the gang back together, and here we are with an hour. So we're going to talk a lot more about what we discussed at ALA in person because we've got an extra 30 minutes. So I hope you're ready for what's to come. I love geeking out about the data. So we're going to talk a little bit about what we've seen over the last 5 years. And a little bit about me. I've spent the last almost 15 years in legal. 8 of those was spent in a law firm and on the ground, as I like to say, managing support staff. I managed 3 offices. I lived the world of email. I did it. I'm having like flashbacks when I'm hearing the panelists talk about email. So we implemented Big Hand when I was there, pre-pandemic. So it's really exciting to be here now, being at Big Hand and helping so many other firms and chatting with these lovely women. I really appreciate all of them being here and for joining me again on another panel. And I'm excited to see what we have to discuss today. So without further ado, just a little bit about our research. So we have 5 years of data that I have analyzed, for lack of a better word, but we as a company have as well. And what the data is telling us is there are all kinds of challenges that are still persisting in the legal world, for lack of a better word. So we're seeing high support staff churn due to retirement. You heard the panelists talk about that. Lateral hiring complexities, both on the support staff side as well as the lawyer side, specifically with associates. You've got lack of visibility of support staff. Again, you've heard the panel speak about that. Cost and standard of service. So clients are expecting more. I've always said for less, but now that's even more heightened, and they are not afraid to jump loyalty to go to another firm where they're going to get lower cost for high standards. And last but not least, one of my favorite topics to talk about is lawyers performing administrative tasks. We definitely don't want them doing tasks that could be done by someone else. Now, that doesn't mean a task that they could do themselves that would take just as long to delegate, but there are many things that would take a moment to delegate that somebody could then go and take care of for the lawyer. So they're not burning the candle at both ends, which is where we end up seeing a lot of lateral movement. All right, so without further ado, we're going to jump into our first theme. So we have 3 themes today. You're going to hear thoughts from each panelist around each theme, and I've got a couple of questions around each. So I'm going to start with Natasha, and we're going to start with data back predictions for 2030. So you heard me talk about the data. So as you can tell, the research is predicting significant changes in support services by 2030. So if we look at what's happened over the last 5, that's going to enable us to try to predict what's going to happen in the next 5. So Natasha, what's your perspective on the future of legal support, and how do you envision the role of technology shaping these services?
Sure. So, one of the most visible shifts that we're already experiencing is in recruiting. The traditional pipeline of legal secretaries is shrinking, and fewer people are entering the field through these conventional paths, right? So, as a result, we've been adapting, expanding our hiring pool to include college students, individuals who are new to the legal market. This change is reshaping how we think about coverage, right? And support ratios. So, where we once had 2 to 1, can you imagine attorney to assistant ratios? We're now seeing 4 to 1 and even 7 to 1 in some firms. So, thanks to like these theme based models, we're like centralizing support and resource centers. Technology, of course, is playing a major enabler in this evolution. So, tools like Big Hand are not just streamlining our workflow, but they're becoming a key factor to how we're attracting our new talent and our next generation of professionals. They're being drawn to it. So even on interviews, we're finding that they're asking questions. They want to know what software, what does the firm offer respectively. They're not interested in pushing paper in these traditional roles. They want to work with systems and be intuitive and be transparent and efficient. As far as how do we think the roles will change and evolve, I do believe that we'll continue to see the shift of individual support roles being collaborative and tech-enabled teams. Traditional assistants are evolving, workflow coordinators, tech-savvy problem solvers. As attorneys become more comfortable with these digital tools, they're relying less on verbal instructions and more on a structured app-based management is what we're finding. And we think that the shift is not only going to increase efficiency, but we do think it's going to empower support staff to take on more strategic roles in the firm.
I love how forward looking you are. And I think a lot of what you said is it's definitely what we're going to see over the next 5 to 10 years. Do we have any other thoughts, from the panel around this topic and what we're going to see in the next 5 or even 10 years?
I would say that you're also going to see a lot of teaming, right? It's going to be a lot of team support as opposed to the singular support. And I feel like that's the direction we're moving in, where you'll have a team of people. So, like Natasha said, those instructions, those expectations will be set by the team, and everybody will understand their role. So, we won't have to go back to, oh my God, my secretary's out. I have nobody to help me. It's going to be like, okay, next person, this is what we need to do. So it'll be more transparency on how we can assist the attorneys and kind of keep them supported, regardless of who's in the office, who's out of the office, who's off working, who's not working.
And that makes it a lot easier to recruit as well for those types of roles and then perhaps create those paths within the firm. Julie, did you have something to add?
Yeah, I do think we're going to see more and more pre-law students working for 1 to 2 years. We're calling it churn and burn. They just want a foundation, and you know what? They're great performers, and they come in for a couple of years, and we know upfront they are not going to be with us forever. And maybe we're even talking to our legal recruiting team about maybe somehow trying to transition them into like the summer associate program in the future and hiring them as associates. So it's really building a pipeline throughout the entire firm, not just within legal support services.
I love that. Amazing. All right. So a little bit on the data around this. So again, I love looking at the data, especially over the last 5 years and even before that. So if we look at this here, a couple of things that I've come to take away from this is if you look at 2021 to 2022, most firms expected around 21 to 40% of support staff to retire. So it was about 48% of firms in 2021 and 56% of firms in 2022. So lots of predictions around retirement back in 2021, 2022. Interestingly enough, 2023, 2024, there was a shift. So we're a little bit more optimistic around that time, and it was showing about 0 to 20% expectations, and we had 51% predicting that in 2024. So really interesting to see that there was predicted minimal retirements. Now here we are a year later, and the stats have come full circle, and there's been another major shift. So only 42% expect low retirements. So think about that shift. It was almost 50% saying they weren't going to have retirements. 17% now expect more than 40% to retire. So I definitely think we're starting to have a more realistic or risk-aware outlook that's emerging. And I think there was a time about a year ago, and I don't know if the panel agrees with me, where I felt like firms were hoping that we could go back to a traditional model because I think we're a very traditional industry. And as much as I love legal and love tradition, I think it's going to be very difficult to do that. So I think the ideas that these ladies are speaking about today are really where we're going. So really what this tells us is that firms are waking up to this compounding risk of aging support. You've heard it from the panel today. There's a lot less certainty, more concern around retirement expectations. And I think we're really hitting a turning point on how firms are viewing workforce planning. So what do I think that's coming in the next 5 years? So just to repeat some of the things the panel has said, so retirements are going to rise sharply. The data is telling us that, and it's been telling us that for 5 years. Talent pressures continue to intensify, hiring, training, upskilling, they're all going to be impacted. And really what the panel is saying is firms must shift from reactive to proactive approach. I think it was Natasha that actually said that in her intro. So just one last thought to leave you here before we move on to the next theme. So just around support team structures, and you heard a lot of discussion around that in the intros and in the last topic, is that there are a number of firms reporting an entirely teamed or centralized support service structure, and that's nearly tripled in the last year. So again, I think we're waking up to some of these changes. And that went from 6 to 16, and that didn't include those that had already done it in the last 5 years. So that is continuing to increase. All right, on to the impact of inaction. So Julie, this one is for you. So for firms that delay or resist change, what do you foresee as the long-term impact on their ability to stay competitive, and what risks are they running by not acting now?
Oh, I have so much to say there. But did you want to jump to the next slide? Because this might lead into some things
Yeah,
that I
sure.
wanted to say. So you can see here that 31% of the firms are saying that attorneys are spending more time doing administrative work than they have in the past. And I am going to assume those tasks are like scheduling, they're more involved in their own billing, or their pre-bill editing, things like that, document management, their compliance reporting. And I think this trend could be dangerous or concerning because, as we all know, it's the obvious, lawyers' time is expensive, and we make more money when they can spend time on high value legal work. So they're spending unnecessary time on some admin tasks that are reducing their billable hours. So we need to keep that in mind. I think that statistic also indicates there's some understaffing. And, Natasha talked about that a little bit. It's very difficult in the market to find experienced legal admin. So really they're having to take on some of this work until we fill positions. And then we're also seeing, at least at my firm, we're seeing a lack of delegation skills. There's a communication barrier. There's something going on here where the newer associates are just afraid to delegate or just don't know how to delegate. So we are working with the professional development team to get them some soft skills training there. And then we have 30% of firms are saying that extra work is falling on employees who are still employed. So people are leaving and retiring. We're not filling the roles. That's adding more work to our existing people. And again, taking more time to fill positions. So they're having to take on all of this extra work for longer periods of time. The firm has fewer employees, but the work doesn't stop. There's still work to do. And then the fewer staff who are carrying the weight are having some morale issues. So these are all things that we need to keep in mind based on these metrics. And then finally, 20% of firms do not have a consistent way. This is really big in my firm right now, to pass important information or share knowledge, the expertise of our people leaving, retiring. There is just a lot of transition time that is not capturing that knowledge. So that knowledge is walking out the door with them. There tends to be a dependency, I think, in the legal industry on a few key individuals.
Yeah.
And those individuals are having a hard time delegating to the incoming team members. And again, it's just a knowledge transfer issue. And then when we do have new hires, the ramp up can be a little chaotic or inconsistent just because of the statistic here. So those are all things to keep in mind as we answer the question that you asked, Deska. So I feel like in my view, the consequences of inaction are twofold. From a competitive client relationship perspective, clients are drilling down more and more into business services. They are setting expectations that they have not in the past, drastically changing. And inaction is no longer a choice. So clients are wanting to see metrics. They want to know more about our productivity measures across the board. How are we setting them? And how are we meeting them? And what tools are we using to get there? The firms that are continuing to rely on manual processes, I think someone on the panel earlier mentioned paper. That's just one example, but the firms that are relying on those manual processes are going to appear inefficient to clients, maybe even out of touch with modern standards, with current standards. Clients are shopping around. Jessica mentioned that. They are shopping around. They're comparing service providers, as we all share or compare service providers. And the stagnant firms are typically lagging behind in developing new services, new tools, improving processes, looking at their processes, and adopting new technologies to improve their processes. This really makes the firm less marketable when the clients are shopping around. Clients also are more involved and have the ability to predict costs. I mean, there's so many tools out there for them. They are going to quickly recognize the firms that fail to automate routine processes or tasks. They know that leads to wasted billable hours and higher overhead costs. And we all know that the cost of staff is passed down to them. So if we are proving that we're creating workplace efficiencies, streamlining workflow, that reduces the need for our traditional model. And then we're improving our ratios, which is less cost for them. So it's all interrelated. The bottom line is that there are reputational risks and operational risks to having outdated systems. And that might be a good thing to discuss with your partners who are fighting the change. So that's the first part of that. The second part of it, which Natasha already covered, but is a competitive talent perspective. So we already said recruiting replacement like for like positions is the biggest challenge. There are going to be fewer experienced assistants in the candidate pool to do the traditional work in the next 5 years. So success is really going to depend on how we're absorbing the work of retiring staff and then hiring tech savvy talent with little to no background. The next generation legal professionals are attracted to firms that are embracing innovation. Again, there's that word innovation, and offering modern workflows. Absolutely, as we've already indicated, they are asking about the systems that we're using. They're asking about teamwork. They're asking about what's in it for me. And firms stuck in outdated systems are going to lose top talent from two perspectives. Their existing top performers may want to go to a firm that's more innovative or flexible or tech forward. And recruiting from the candidate pool, those candidates have options, and they are going to look at the tools that we're all using and go to the firm that offers the most fun technology.
Amazing. Julie, I love your passion for this. Wow.
I'm a
If
nerd.
if anybody was with us at ALA, poor Julie didn't get to fly in on time, so we tried to do her justice and have Ben Jennings step in, and that was definitely not as good as that, even though we love you, Ben, and you did the best job you could with the notes that we had. So thank you, Julie. It's so great to have you here to hear what you were going to say at the session back in ALA. Does anybody have anything they want to add with respect to their firms or other things that they're thinking or anything they want to reaffirm before we move along? I think Julie, oh, there, Karen. Yes, Karen, what do you got for
Yeah,
us?
I just wanted to reiterate the succession planning. You know, the last of the baby boomers reach full retirement age in 2031. So we have another 6 to 10 years probably of high turnover rate. So I think that's going to be just a key driver for every firm for the next 10 years, more than likely. So,
What a
and figuring
great
out
stat to
creative
have.
ways to
Excellent.
keep them
I
in the
had to write that
workforce
down.
longer
Yeah.
is going to be, you know, the task at hand. Yeah.
Wow, that stat hit me. You know, I love the data, and I don't know if I've heard that one. That was really good, Karen. Thank you. I'm gonna save that too. Amazing. Okay, let's move on. We're on to our third topic. I think we've covered this, so I'm going to jump over to strategic moves for firms to stay ahead. So we have the lovely ladies from Fox who are going to cover this for us from their different perspectives. They both work in different areas. So we'll start with Karen, and we're going to cover what strategic moves firms should make in the next 12 to 18 months to ensure they're ready for 2030. So Julie's talked about, like we've talked about what's going to happen, but now what do we need to do to get there? From a strategic perspective, what are the key priorities for firms today to stay ahead? So Karen, we'll start with you if you don't mind.
Sure. So again, I think data is everything. Being able to make qualitative and quantitative decisions based on the data versus subjective decisions is going to be huge for firms. And you have to have some sort of technology platform to be able to do that. And it's a very effective, efficient way to leverage your workforce and really understand what's happening. The other aspect is training. I think a continual upskilling of your current employees is important. And so focusing on a standardized skill set across all positions is extremely important to continue to position your firm as best as possible for the future. This is sort of a win-win. Yes, training is great for everyone, but particularly Gen Z, they love learning and development. And that is a key thing to kind of attract them into your firm, is that if you have a learning platform or some sort of training path for them, they love the training. And so that's going to help firms keep talent longer. That's a generation that as well that you might get a year or two, you're doing really good if you got 5 years out of them. But as long as they're have a career path and they're progressing and they're learning and developing, there's a higher percentage there of keeping them a little bit longer term. So I think the other aspect is that you really have to look at your traditional legal assistant role and find new ways and opportunities to engage those individuals, especially your tenured individuals. You know, whether that is putting them in a mentor or leadership role, a senior type of legal assistant title change with a bump in salary, maybe help happen, you know, involving them in potentially coordinating coverage or making sure those teams are operating at an efficient level. I think leveraging their skill set and knowledge and keeping them engaged is also going to be critical for firms moving forward. It just is not the same legal environment that it was 30 years ago. Artificial intelligence, who knows where that's going to lead us. And so, change management is a big factor for this group. And so the more that you can prepare them and the more that you can train them and upskill them and invest in them, that should pay off in rewards of longer term staying. So other things I think that are very important is creating that career path. And so whether it's an entry level and a mid level and a senior level position, again, bringing new talent into your firm is going to require progression and a career path. Gen Z, they got a trophy and a certificate for everything. And so coming into the workforce, they're constantly looking for that continual feedback and those career opportunities as how they can be better, what can they do more. And so we've got to be able to feed into that. And so, having some sort of technology platform for learning management and the productivity tracking, I think is imperative for firms going forward.
Karen, you've got some great nuggets on different generations. We need to pick your brain more on that. Amazing. Teresa, let's hear from the ARC perspective.
So from the ARC perspective, the training, like she said, is definitely something that we keep like very close and dear. And it's not just, saying it, but being about it. So that training has to keep coming and coming frequently. For me, I also feel like it's the communication of what this team does. We have to constantly communicate it with the attorneys and everyone that's going to be involved as we move ahead. I think people need to be aware. We talk about it, in circles, but we need to make sure that we're including everyone in those discussions so they know where they're fit, because it's really difficult to see things changing around you and not understanding where you're going to stand and how it's going to affect you. And that is from every level of staff, to me, needs to be involved. I make it a point to visit the different offices, and I can discuss, how BCAN works for us and how our team is incorporated in the training and what we can do for them. And I still get people who look at us with deer headlights, like, what are you talking about? We're doing what now? So you constantly have to kind of remind them of the different skills that are available, the different things that each team can bring to them. I think people tend to be in the moment, and it's not until they need something that they realize, hey, I could get help somewhere else. So those administrative tasks that the attorney shouldn't be doing, we're constantly giving them reminders that this is what we can do, and this is the team environment culture that the firm is creating to help them get through their day so they don't have to feel like they're alone. And they can't even use the excuse anymore, the time of day, right? Because that would be the other thing. Everybody leaves at 5 o'clock and there's no one there. We're there till 11. So we're able to help you. We may not be able to do everything at that time, but we could get everything prepared for them so that when we reopen, we can take care of that. So I think that it's just being flexible. So it's from when we're available, how we're working, and what we can do to assist, and just communicating it constantly, making sure that everyone's on the same page and understands what the firm is offering them and all of the different value that everyone brings. No one should have to be working alone.
Oh, I love that. The last statement, no one should have to be working alone. I 100% agree. And that's where burnout can come from, because sometimes they feel like they are alone. And they, like Julie said, they're not educated in how to delegate. So they're like, I'll just do it myself. But then they end up burning out, leaving legal even sometimes. So I think that's extremely important. And I think the ARC model, in a lot of firms, or in other firms, I've heard it called many other things, but we'll just call it the ARC for the purposes of today, has been very successful. Even if you start just with when new people join in the fall, they're going to go into an associate teaming model. And whether you decide for that to be the first 1 to 2 to 5 years, I've seen it even up to 8 years. But I think it is an excellent model that I've seen very successful in various firms. And it can be done in small firms as well as large firms. All right, last little bit about the data, and then we're going to get key takeaways from our panel here. So the firms that won't be doing more, sorry, I can't read my own writing here, and usually I go off the cuff. The firms that win won't be doing more. They'll be doing the right things. Or I always say, the definition of insanity is like doing the same thing over and over and expecting a different outcome. So I think the right things are defining the right roles, upskilling with purpose, letting lawyers focus on legal work, using data to guide change, and doing nothing, as I said, is costly. And doing the same thing over and over is the definition of insanity. So if you can't measure it, you can't manage it. So those are my takeaways. I'm going to lead us over to Natasha to give you hers. Sorry.
Sure. So key takeaways for me, metrics drive efficiency and effectiveness. We've already gotten data that has shown us department analysis, work type trends, peak days and times, and giving managers the ability to make data-driven decisions is a game changer. So metrics. Ease and configuration is key. One of the early things that we found out in our pilot when we were launching is keep it simple. We learned less is more. We gained the most buy-in from our teams when we simplified the task and forms and involved them in the decision-making process of the design. And so the partnership made them feel like they had greater buy-in, and it resulted in greater engagement. My key takeaways.
Amazing. I love it. Julie.
I'm trying to unmute. Sorry about that. Over communicate. That's it. They want to know the why, especially the partners, the leadership teams. They want to know why is this so important. Well, we just gave you a lot of data and statistics that you can use. So just over communicating that, repeating the benefits as much as possible, providing little demos. One thing we created at our firm was 11 at 11 micro training sessions. So for about a 6-week period, once a quarter, at 11 o'clock on a Thursday, any attorney at the firm can pop onto an 11-minute quick demo. What do you need to learn how to do? Do you need to know how to create a template? Do you need to know how to use the email gateway? So these are little snippets, and they actually have gone over very well because they don't feel like they have to sit in an hour training. So little snippets repeatedly, just keep repeating yourself, offering demos, keep it moving. And then finally, we have to find the internal champions. As I mentioned earlier in my introduction, we really started with a group of attorneys that utilize document production more than others. They very easily adapted to Big Hand. And then we also started with an office that tends to be more tech savvy and understands why we have to change our technology system. So really just finding who those internal champions are and get them on your team.
Amazing. I love the communication piece, and everybody said communication today. My favorite statement, communicate until you're nauseous. And 11 at 11, I knew you had a really cool term that I forgot about that we didn't get to say in person. So you've heard it here this time. All right, over to Teresa. I love the first line here.
I think for law firms, this is probably the hardest thing is ripping off the Band-Aid and just going for it. But you do have to do that. Listen, not everyone's going to agree. And you're going to have those opposers, but if they're all in it together, they can commiserate and come to an agreement at some point. Implement the changes and be prepared to have those conversations, to explain yourself again and again as to why you're doing certain things. Everyone needs to understand, from the people who are going to be doing the job to the people who will be submitting the job, everybody has to be on board. Will they all agree? That's another conversation. But if we are honest about what we're doing, we're transparent. They can see what's going on. They understand. They may not have to like it, but trust me, eventually everyone will need you and they will come back full circle and be like, oh, I'm so glad you guys are here because I really need help. So they don't know the value until they've been forced into a situation. So over communicate, as my friend Julie said, there's not enough communication that could go into what's going on. And that's internal with the team that, again, is giving the support, the team who's going to be asking for the support. Everybody needs to understand their role. I think when we all know about the vision, it's a little bit better to comprehend why we're making the change.
My favorite statement that you said was not everybody needs to be on board, but they don't need to agree. That was really good. Really, really good. We've gotten lots of little nuggets today, everyone. All right. Last but not least, Karen, and then we're going to dive into questions.
So every firm I've ever talked to is structured differently, has some sort of teaming model that's different. So it's not a one size one way fit everyone. Talk to your peers, learn what worked from them, what didn't, what were the pitfalls, What things did they learn after the fact? There's just a wealth of information out there to help you develop the plan that you need to move forward with. And then once you've developed that plan and you've gotten your executive committee to sign off on it, hold the line. You've got to stay strong and stay firm in your belief that this is the best thing to move and position your firm for the future. And you can't waver on that. They're looking for your leadership in that role. And change is an arduous process. It is a slow process and a painful process in law firms. And so whatever you implement, any change is going to be difficult. And so again, it comes back to a lot of communication, a lot of people communication, interaction, relationships to help slowly get everybody moving in the same direction, but don't give up. So
don't give up. I love that. I have two things to add. So I just want to bring in the voice from the smaller, the mid-sized firms. You can do this too. You don't need all the resources that larger firms have. There's a way for every type of firm. So just remember, like Julie said, don't give up. Or sorry, like Karen said, don't give up and don't stop fighting for what you believe in. All right. So now we have time for questions. So I'm going to open up the chat because I can't see it right now. I'm gonna see if we've got any in there. 11 at 11. I love that idea, somebody says. Okay. We've got, since data and metrics are so crucial, how do you incentivize support staff to engage with the platforms collecting those metrics, especially, sorry, on billable tasks? Any specific benefits that you find work especially well as an incentive? What have we seen? Natasha?
So I'll say from the newbie perspective, one of the things that I did, or one of the things we were able to do, was we surveyed before getting into this, right? We had all the feedback from support staff, what's not working, what challenges they have. And we kind of, in the launch, culminated all the things that they were complaining about and related it back to how we're going to get that information out of Big Hand, right? So that they're overstaffed and overworked, that we need the data to build these resource centers. We need to prove it to leadership and prove it to management. So we kind of used what they said for them to, as far as incentive, right? And said that, look, we can't guarantee anything, but we need you guys to get the information and get the data in to the system. And that's when we'll be able to make changes. So that's one of the things we use for incentive.
Awesome.
Anyone else? I would like to follow up on that. Just one of the two selling points that we've tried to utilize is knowing the data, seeing the data. We can help get them additional help and support where needed, right? Because we have these ebbs and flows of where this one desk and pairing has a super heavy workload and somebody over here has capacity. And so part of this and the data and the metrics is to even out that workload as well, so that everybody's equally sharing and has a fair amount of work. So that's two of the selling points that we've used, particularly for our dedicated legal secretaries and assistants.
I'll chime in quickly too. We say that we're utilizing the data because it's true to continue to be able to have hybrid schedules. Like if we're showing that you're just as productive when you're working remotely as you are in the office, we can use that data, and it just helps us continue to have some flexible scheduling.
Amazing. Great advice. Okay, we still have a few more minutes. Do you have your staff in the office every day? This is another carrot. Hybrid or fully remote? Do you see better metrics with this?
So because of the hours that my team keeps, I have a little bit of both. I have some people that are on hybrid and I have some people that are fully remote. It really depends on the timing of the tasks and, you know, the safety of those traveling at certain times. But I do find if you have a hybrid, I feel that's the best of both worlds, because not only are they in the face of the people that they're supporting, but there is definitely more usage if they can see the person. But that's not to say that those are fully remote aren't being utilized, because 9 o'clock at night and you're stuck trying to get something done, you know where to go. I feel like it should be both. If you can do both hybrid as well as fully remote, I would say do it, because they're my biggest cheerleaders, right? And so if they can see these people and know that we're just not, you know, the wizard behind the computer, it definitely gives them a little bit more confidence and that, someone real and not AI is doing the work.
I love that. Someone real, not AI, is doing the work. That's great. We still need people to generate the AI. Anyone else that wants to add to that one? All right, Joanne. Hi, Joanne. Have you put into place any procedures to ensure quality assurance? I know Joanne, she's put this question in. Any practices around quality assurance? So any quality check spots? Go ahead, Teresa.
So what we have is when a task comes into Big Hand, it is reviewed. We have workflow coordinators, and the workflow coordinators, their job is to review the task to make sure it's something we should be doing. And they're doing a quality check to make sure the attachments are there. Once they have designated that this is a task for us to handle, it goes back into the queue, and then someone from that region will take the job. They will contact the submitter, have a conversation to make sure A, we can meet their deadline, and B, ask if there's any additional information that they need. Once the specialist has completed the task, it goes back into the queue, and one of those workflow coordinators is going to review the task again before it goes to the submitter. So that is our quality check. I want to say that it is helpful because listen, when you read something, we all have different interpretations. If I was to put into my comments, I want it proofread, and I asked each of you what proofreading means, each of you will have a different answer for me. Somebody think it's going to be grammar. Someone's going to say it's spelling. Everyone's going to have a different answer. So because of, again, it's words that we're reading, it's always better to have that quality check in place.
Yep.
Hopefully that
Wonderful.
answered.
Sorry, go ahead. I talked over someone. Oh, I guess that was it. Anyone else have anything to add on that? I think that's our last question, which means we could give everyone 4 minutes back. I do have the barcode for the report for the stats that we talked about today, so I'm just going to pop that onto the screen. If anybody wants to get that, they can. I do believe that Joy put it in the chat as well. I just want to thank everyone for joining us. Like, what a great opportunity to do this session twice with these amazing women. I appreciate you all so much for doing this again for the second time. It was bigger and better. It was awesome. Thank you so much. And thanks to everyone that joined us. I hope that you got something out of it, and have a great day.